Tonight, you will lie in bed and worry about something that cannot hurt you. An email you have not sent. A comment someone left on a photo. A conversation that went slightly wrong 4 hours ago and will not stop replaying. It feels modern. It feels like a problem invented by phones and offices and other people's opinions online. But the real answer is far stranger. Your ancestors worried too. Constantly. And the shape of their worry built the exact machine that keeps you up tonight. Start with the numbers because the numbers are brutal. The anthropologists Michael Gurven and Hillard Kaplan studied mortality data across dozens of hunter-gatherer and forager-horticulturalist populations, and the picture they found was unforgiving. Roughly a quarter of infants did not survive their first year. Death by violence, infection, or accident was a routine possibility at every age, not a rare tragedy. So did ancient humans worry about lions? Sometimes. But predators were not the main event. The main event was each other. Here is the part that reframes everything. For most of human history, your survival did not depend on your strength. It depended on your reputation. A person who could hunt but could not be trusted got quietly excluded from the group. Exclusion, in a small band with no backup plan, was close to a death sentence. So the anxious brain evolved for a reason. It was not broken. It was doing exactly its job, scanning constantly for one question. Does the group still accept me? Think about what that means. Every glance, every tone of voice, every joke that landed wrong, all of it mattered enormously because there was no anonymous crowd to disappear into. There were maybe 30, maybe 80 people, and you would see the same faces for the rest of your life. Imagine your entire social world reduced to one small office you could never quit and never leave. That is not a metaphor. That is simply what a Pleistocene band was. The psychologist and anthropologist Robin Dunbar built an entire theory around this pressure. He proposed that human language itself evolved not to share hunting tips, but to do something closer to social grooming. Chimpanzees pick lice off each other to maintain alliances. Humans, Dunbar argued, developed gossip instead, because gossip is grooming that can reach an entire group at once. And gossip only works as a bonding tool if you deeply, urgently care what is being said about you. Which means the anxious, self-monitoring part of your brain and the talkative, storytelling part of your brain may have evolved together, feeding each other. Now picture the actual evenings. Not the hunt. The fire afterward. The anthropologist Polly Wiessner spent years recording conversations among the Jew/Hon San people of the Kalahari, and she noticed something specific. Daytime talk was practical. Complaints, coordination, gossip about who was slacking. Nighttime talk, around the fire, shifted almost entirely into a different mode. Stories, accounts of distant relatives, distant lands, ancestors long gone. Why the shift? Because firelight was one of the only times the group was not working, not foraging, not defending, and finally had the mental space to worry about something bigger than the day. Meaning. Belonging. What happens after death? Sound familiar? It should. That is you at 11 at night, phone glowing instead of firelight, still scrolling through other people's lives, still trying to work out where you stand in the story. There is a darker layer too. Anthropologists like Napoleon Chagnon, studying groups such as the Yanomamo, documented just how real the threat of interpersonal violence could be in societies without centralized law. Feuds. Retaliation. Alliances that shifted overnight. Living inside that kind of world does something specific to a nervous system. It rewards constant threat assessment. It rewards a brain that never fully relaxes because the person smiling at you today might be a problem tomorrow, and missing that shift could cost you everything. So here is the uncomfortable truth sitting underneath your modern anxiety. Your brain was not built for a world with too much information. It was built for a world with too much stakes. Every social signal used to carry survival weight. Every judgment from the group could genuinely determine whether you ate this season or starved. And that machinery never got the memo that the stakes changed. This is why a single unanswered text can feel disproportionately awful. Your prefrontal cortex knows, logically, that nothing catastrophic is happening. But the older, faster parts of your brain, the ones shaped over hundreds of thousands of years, are running a different calculation. Silence from the group used to mean something. Ignoring that old alarm is hard because ignoring it was never adaptive. Children were their own separate category of worry, heavier than almost anything else. With infant mortality as high as it was, every cough, every fever, every fall carried a weight that most modern parents thankfully will never fully understand. But here is the part that reframes even this. The worry was not carried by two people alone. It was distributed. Grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, unrelated group members, all of them watched, fed, carried, and protected the group's children collectively. A crying infant in camp was everyone's business, not just the mother's. That distributed worry meant no single person was left holding the full weight of catastrophe alone. Compare that to a modern parent, isolated in an apartment, scrolling a parenting forum at 2 in the morning, carrying an ancient-sized fear with none of the ancient-sized support system that used to come attached to it. The fear did not shrink. The village did. There is a flip side worth sitting with though. If constant social monitoring kept your ancestors alive, it also kept them close. The anthropologist Sarah Blaffer Hrdy has written extensively about what she calls cooperative breeding, the idea that human children were never raised by a single set of parents alone, but by a wide, overlapping network of relatives and group members who all had a stake in that child surviving. Worry in that light was not only fear. It was also a form of attention. Watching each other closely was how the group functioned as a single organism. The same vigilance that produced anxiety also produced extraordinary cooperation, extraordinary care, a level of mutual investment that most modern strangers never offer each other at all. Consider food too, because food worry looked nothing like modern food worry. You might stress today about what to eat. Ancient humans stressed about whether there would be anything to eat at all. The anthropologist Kim Hill, working for decades among the Ake of Paraguay, documented just how unpredictable a forager's caloric intake could be. Some days brought a successful hunt and abundance. Other days brought nothing and the group simply went without. Hill's research showed something important. Foragers survived not through individual stockpiling, but through wide, obligatory food sharing across the entire band. A good hunter who kept his kill for himself was not admired. He was distrusted, sometimes punished, sometimes pushed out entirely. So the worry was never purely about hunger. It was about whether you were sharing enough, and whether others were sharing enough with you, because your personal food security depended entirely on staying inside that web of mutual obligation. That single fact rewires how you should think about fairness anxiety today. Why does it still sting so sharply when a friend does not reciprocate a favor? Why does an uneven split of a bill, of credit at work, of attention in a relationship, provoke a reaction that feels wildly out of proportion to the actual stakes? Because for most of human history, an uneven split was never a small thing. It was a signal. It meant the web of obligation that kept you fed might be quietly unraveling. Then there was status, which worked differently than modern status too. The anthropologist Christopher Boehm spent years examining what he called reverse dominance hierarchies among foraging societies. Unlike chimpanzee troops, where a single alpha can dominate through raw physical force, human forager bands actively worked to prevent any one person from accumulating too much power. Boehm documented how groups used ridicule, gossip, ostracism, and occasionally direct confrontation to cut down anyone who got too full of themselves. Bragging was dangerous. Visible arrogance was dangerous. The safest social position was often modest, cooperative, quietly competent. So imagine growing up inside a world where standing out too much could get you socially punished, and staying too far in the background could get you overlooked and unprotected. That narrow corridor between the two, not too loud, not too invisible, is a tightrope your brain still walks today, every single time you hesitate before posting something, before speaking up in a meeting, before accepting a compliment. Sleep worried them too in its own particular way. Without walls, without locks, without streetlights, nighttime was genuinely more dangerous than day. Some researchers studying contemporary hunter-gatherer sleep patterns, including work led by the sleep scientist Jerome Siegel among the Hadza and San, found that these groups slept less continuously than industrialized populations often assume, with periods of wakefulness scattered through the night. Some of that wakefulness likely served a purpose. A group that is never fully, completely asleep all at once is a group that is harder to ambush. Your own restless 3 a.m. waking, the one that feels like a modern insomnia disorder, may be running on hardware built for exactly this kind of shared, staggered vigilance. What did ancient humans actually worry about, then? Not predators mostly. Not, despite what movies suggest, constant physical danger from nature itself. They worried about standing. About belonging. About whether the group still saw them as one of its own. They worried about their children's safety in a world with no hospitals and no guarantees. They worried, around the fire, about the larger questions too, the ones with no clean answers, the ones that still keep you up tonight in a different form. The tools have changed completely. The fire is a screen. The band of 80 has become a feed of thousands. But the underlying question your brain keeps asking, on a loop, has not changed even slightly. Am I still accepted here? Am I safe within this group? Notice that the next time your chest tightens over something small, a message left unread, a joke that landed flat, a silence you cannot explain. That is not a modern glitch. That is one of the oldest systems in your body, still lit by a fire that went out a very long time ago. Tonight, you will lie in bed and you will worry about something that cannot hurt you. And for the first time, maybe, you will recognize exactly what that worry actually is. Not weakness. Not a malfunction. Just an ancient survival instrument still faithfully doing its job, still trying to keep you inside the group.